Santo Sorge was close with both Joe Bonanno and Charlie Luciano. The Federal Bureau of Narcotics once labelled him as the 5th most important mobster in the United States. He was also alleged to be a key member of a Mafia super gang. And yet, Santo Sorge is rarely discussed. Let's check him out. Welcome to OC Shorts, bringing you detailed historical snapshots of the American Mafia and other organised crime. Feel free to subscribe if you like that sort of thing. Today, we're going to take a quick look at mysterious mobster Santo Sorge and his ties to an alleged Mafia super gang. In 1962, Harry Anslinger, the first commissioner of the US Treasury Department's Federal Bureau of Narcotics, announced a list of the 10 most important mobsters operating in the United States. The list was ranked by importance, and sitting at number 5 was Santo Sorge. Let's take a look at who else was on the list. Number 1, Vito Genovese, 63, although now behind bars, remains the number 1 power in the underworld. He was convicted on a narcotics rap. Number 2, Giuseppe Profaci, 63, an influential Mafia member, attends church, avoids night spots, uses a Brooklyn taxi cab company as a front. Number 3, Gaetano Lucchese, 61, known as Three Finger Brown, actually is missing only one finger, but borrowed the nickname from a favourite baseball pitcher. Number 4, Carmine Galante, 51, has replaced Albert Anastasia as Gangdom's chief executioner. He was once convicted of shooting a detective and 2 children. Number 5, Santo Sorge, 53, has no police record in this country. Always pressed and pomaded, he is a familiar figure in New York's exclusive clubs and restaurants. Number 6, Joseph Little Rabbit Biondo, 64, operates a real estate office on Long Island, commutes regularly to Italy to consult with departed Mafia mobsters. Number 7, Joseph Bonanno, 56, known as Joe Bananas, was an Al Capone gunman. He is fond of basking in the Tucson, Arizona sun. Number 8, Vincenzo Cotroni, 50, and his brother Joe operate the largest and most notorious narcotic syndicate in North America from Montreal. Number 9, Salvatore Mannarino, 55, and his brother Gabriel are strong-arm Mafia hoodlums. They run rackets in Pennsylvania, have far-reaching underworld contacts. Number 10, Santo Trafficante Jr, 51, dapper and dignified, succeeded his deceased father as a Mafia power. Squeezed out of Cuba, he now operates in Florida. As can be seen, the rarely discussed Santo Sorge is listed with some very well-known mobsters. It is an interesting list, despite including a few errors, such as stating that Joe Bonanno had once been a gunman for Al Capone. It must be noted that although this list is said to be the top 10 most important mobsters in the country, it was compiled by the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, so it can be assumed that those names are listed with regards to importance of their influence in narcotics trafficking. So, what do we know about Santo Sorge? Santo Sorge was born on the 11th of January 1908 in Musamelli, Caltanissetta, Sicily. He immigrated to the United States on the 3rd of February 1941 and became a naturalized citizen on the 7th of June 1948. The Federal Bureau of Narcotics lists his criminal associates as Lucky Luciano, Carmine Galante, Caledro Di Carlo, Vito Genovese, Giuseppe Bonanno, Giuseppe DiPalermo, and John Balsamo. Santo Sorge was listed as living at 222 East 57th Street. By the early 1960s, Sorge had no criminal record in the United States, but he had been expelled from France in 1932, and the Italian government had convicted him in absentia of espionage and falsification of documents in 1939. The FBN summary of Santo Sorge says, one of the most important Mafia leaders, travels extensively between Italy and US in furtherance of ostensibly legitimate international ventures which probably cover for liaison duties between highest-ranking mafiosi in US and Italy. Has considerable political influence in Italy. It has been suggested by some sources that Santo Sorge was a member of the Sicilian Mafia, rather than being inducted in the United States. However, Despite this, historians have still speculated which New York Cosa Nostra family Sorge was officially affiliated with. Santo Sorge is predominantly linked with the Bonanno crime family and the Luciano crime family, now known as the Genovese. In 1948, Carlo Gambino and his brother Paolo Gambino met with Charlie Luciano in Italy to discuss smuggling narcotics and immigrants. Santo Sorge was key in this operation. One FBI file states, the Gambinos were reported to exercise control of the narcotic smuggling activities between the mafia element in Palermo and the United States on behalf of Salvatore Lucchese, and during 1948 both Gambino brothers met with Lucchese at the home of their relatives in Palermo, Sicily. Investigation conducted by the Bureau of Narcotics after 30-some-odd Sicilian aliens had been smuggled into the United States aboard the SS Panormus at the port of Philadelphia during May 1948 disclosed that Carlo Gambino was involved in the smuggling of these aliens, and that some of these aliens in turn had smuggled substantial quantities of heroin into the United States as a payment for being brought into the country. Investigation further developed the information that among those interested in the smuggling of these aliens was a representative of the Santo Sorge Trading Company, 196 First Avenue, New York City. This company is operated by Santo Sorge, an intimate associate of Salvatore Lucchese. Just under a decade later, Santo Sorge was reported to have been present at the infamous narcotics trafficking mafia meeting at the Grand Hotel in Palermo in 1957. As an FBI file states, DLT2 stated that his agency had developed information that just prior to the Appalachian meeting, Carmine Galante and Joe Bonanno were observed at Palermo, Italy with Santo Sorge. Sorge, according to DLT2, is the #1 lieutenant in Sicily of Charles Lucky Luciano. This information is also reported by several newspapers the following year, in 1958. One newspaper wrote, Martin F. Pera of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics testified that he believed that Charles Lucky Luciano, deported mobster now in Italy, had something to do with staging the Hoodlum Convention. He said that earlier in 1957, Carmine Galante and Joseph Bonanno of Brooklyn had gone to Palermo, Italy, and held a very significant meeting with Santo Sorge, who is regarded as the contact with Luciano. It is information such as this, relating to his relationship with Joe Bonanno and Charlie Luciano, that leads to the confusion around which New York LCN family Santo Sorge was affiliated with. Interestingly, in 1966, during the Bonanno family civil war, Santo Sorge was even listed by the FBI as a possible candidate to become boss of the Bonanno crime family. The file states, since that time, this family remained split into at least 2 and probably 3 factions, with one faction remaining loyal to Bonanno. Various individuals have been rumoured to be taking over for Di Gregorio, among them Michael Consolo, Santo Sorge, Joseph Arthur Ziccarelli, John Morale, Salvatore Bonanno, Paul Sciacca, and Caruso. It is entirely possible that Santo Sorge was linked with the possibility of becoming Bonanno family boss because of his close connection with Joe Bonanno, rather than being an actual member of the Bonanno family. But regardless of this, the fact that his name was mentioned demonstrates his influence in Cosa Nostra at the time. It can be speculated that Santo Sorge had no allegiances with any of the New York families, but was in fact a powerful middleman between the families in Sicily and America, especially in the narcotics trade. Interestingly, in 1965, it was reported that Santo Sorge was part of a Mafia Super Gang, a group of mobsters from Sicily and America who were running the narcotics trafficking industry between Europe and Northern America. As one newspaper reported, they were identified as Santo Sorge, 57, and Gaetano Russo, 73, both of New York, and Joseph Cerrito, 54, of California. Sorge and Russo were alleged to be members of a New York super gang that links the mafia in Sicily to the US Cosa Nostra. The authorities on both sides of the Atlantic tried to close in on the mysterious Santo Sorge, and the Italian police even spoke with infamous mob turncoat Joseph Valachi. Valachi told the authorities, "I know Santo Sorge, and I know he belongs to the Cosa Nostra. It is my personal knowledge that his function was to go and come from America to Italy and vice versa, carrying out tasks that I don't know. I was never able to understand to what family he belongs. He was a close friend to all Cosa Nostra bosses." The Italian authorities then proceeded to arrest key figures in this alleged Mafia super gang. It was reported, police long had suspected ties between the ancient Mafia and the post-war US Cosa Nostra, but this was the first time they had amassed enough evidence of such links to obtain arrest warrants. All 14 men arrested or being sought are Italian-born. 8 have American backgrounds. Giuseppe Genco Russo, 73, described by the press as the uncrowned king of the Mafia, was one of those seized. Collegio Charles Orlando, 59, a Sicilian-born resident of New York, thought earlier to have been in the US, was picked up here tonight in a luxury hotel. He had arrived in Sicily from the US 2 days ago. These Italo-Americans were being sought in the US. Santo Sorge, 57, a US citizen of New York, accused in the past of fraud and espionage. Joseph Cerrito, 54, a US citizen living in California, described by the police as a friend of the late dope and vice czar Luciano. And Gaetano Tom Russo, 73, a US citizen of New York, described as a friend of Luciano. However, despite extradition attempts and various charges, Santo Sorge's lawyer always maintained that his client was a legitimate businessman. Santo Sorge even sued 2 former New York police officers regarding their testimony against him. It was reported, New York City has undertaken the legal defense of 2 retired police officers who were being sued for defamation and libel because of testimony they gave for an Italian court in 1965 as experts on the Mafia. Sorge, who is under indictment of the Palermo court for criminal conspiracy as an alleged member of an international ring of mafiosi, lives here. He is suing for $418,000 for loss of employment and other damages he contends he suffered as a result of alleged false information. He had been an employee or shareholder in several corporations with business interests here and in Sicily. The 2 police officers, John F. Shanley and Ralph Salerno, had said of Santo Sorge, "Shanley, I know him. He has suspicious connections with the heads of Cosa Nostra, but it has not been possible to associate him with any one family. He is suspected of maintaining liaison between Cosa Nostra and members living in Italy, but it has never been possible to prove it with certainty." Ralph Salerno, "Yes, and particularly he has had close relations of interests, the exact nature of which has not been possible to ascertain with the family of Vito Genovese, and particularly with Charles Lucky Luciano when he was alive. It has not been possible for me to precisely place Santo Sorge in one of the families." In 1968, the Italian government, after being unable to extradite Santo Sorge from America, tried him in court in absentia. As one FBI file shows, Vincenzo Martinez, Frank Garofalo, and Rosario Vitaliti will stand trial. Joseph Bonanno, Santo Sorge, Carmine Galante, John Priziola, Rafael Quasarano, and Francesco Schimoni will be tried in absentia. In the end, Santo Sorge and his co-defendants were acquitted of all charges in the Italian court. As the book Manhattan Mafia Guide states, by May, defense lawyers had cross-examined several witnesses trying to establish Sorge's credibility as a legitimate businessman. On May 7th and 8th, several people took the stand and testified that Sorge was the head of a legitimate Sicilian company called Mediterranean Metals. On June the 25th, Sorge and all co-defendants were acquitted. 4 years later, in 1972, the mysterious Santo Sorge would die of natural causes. He was 64 years of age. I hope you found that interesting. Thanks for watching.